Charlie Hill on Alpha. Altitude 250 feet. You're down long. And your touchdown. Nose gear touchdown.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeff. I've been gathering and analyzing data from NASA Select TV broadcasts for about 9 years now. I produced this film, first in a series, to enlighten you on what I've found. It's been a lot of hard work, but I feel it was worth it. All of the video you're about to see is courtesy of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I put it together in such a way as to hopefully tell each story as accurately as possible. This film represents my own opinions on the many anomalous objects we'll explore in the next 90 minutes or so. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to draw your own conclusions. At all times during these events, the shuttle's payload bay camera was under the control of the Instrument and Communication Officer, known by the acronym INCO. He was operating by remote control from a desk in Mission Control Houston. The INCO has the last word on what goes out to the public from these live downlinks from the space shuttle. Likewise, the Communication and Tracking Officer, or CATO, remotely operates the TV cameras aboard the International Space Station. He is responsible for everything we see from ISS. Both these persons have a cutoff switch and operate on a confirmed 20-second delay in their television broadcasts. Coming up next, we will examine some of the tricks these fellows use to hide anomalies from public view. Since the late 1990s, NASA have been adding a snow mask or artificial noise to live downlinks taken at night. It's almost always present in night video from the shuttles in ISSI. The INCOs and CATOs are human beings, however, and sometimes they forget to turn it on. We have some startling examples of this coming up. In these cases, either the snow is forgotten altogether, or it is very suddenly turned on after a short interval of clear pictures from space. Please bear in mind that television from space is as common as sunshine. Most of the programming you see on your TV at home comes from satellites in high orbit. ISSI and the shuttles use such satellites to relay their TV signals back to Earth. Have you noticed a mask of annoying snow in your favorite shows lately? Neither have I. August 2001, and it's sunset over the eastern United States. As soon as the sun is gone, the snow is suddenly turned on like the flick of a switch. Also note the red, green, blue color cycling. We'll address that phenomenon later on. This is another example from August 2001. See how the snow is applied to the video as soon as the sun is gone from view? This mask seems to me a good way to obscure fine detail in night video. Things such as anomalies. This clip from the ISS spacewalk of March 2005 is a classic example of a forgotten switch. Once the sun has fully set, we have a perfectly clear picture, but the Cato swiftly rectifies that situation. In this portion of the ISS spacewalk of November 2005, we see the usual nastiness until the Cato switches to the helmet camera in astronaut Bill MacArthur's spacesuit. This picture is crystal clear, but they can't leave that alone, so it's back to the degraded view from before. Here we have a curious bar pattern superimposed over the downlink from ISSE during the spacewalk of February 2006. In this case, from the ISS spacewalk of January 2005, the snow was switched off, possibly by accident. When the error was noticed, there was a sudden cut to a camera inside ISSE for just a few seconds. Upon returning to the outside view once more, the snow mask was back in place again. One thing I must point out is that for interior views from ISSE and the shuttles, there is never a hint of snow, day or night. The mask is only used in nighttime broadcasts from outside where the odd anomaly might be seen. This segment will show proof positive that the snowy mask is indeed an addition to the downlink after it is received from our spacecraft. Note the clarity of the NASA logo in this pre-launch sequence. There is no snow at all here. Now compare the logo in this nighttime downlink from STS-121. You can actually see that the snow is overlaid upon the TV from space. The logo is as snowy as the picture. Unless the snow were added after the fact, the logo would be crystal clear. What do you think of all this? These examples show just what the low-light night cameras aboard American spacecraft are capable of at night. This view is over Colorado with Denver near top center. See how clear the video is. This is a nighttime pass over California. We can plainly see the cities and towns below. The San Francisco Bay Area is the circular pattern near center. The greater Los Angeles area follows close on with Las Vegas, Nevada to the left, shining brightly in the desert night. Now we take a last look at the rubbish we are usually shown by these cameras at night. Pretty bad, isn't it? This example is provided here to show just how simple it is to add a snowy mask to video. There is no good reason for NASA to do this, unless there's something to hide. Yet another item in the Inco-Cato bag of tricks is the red, green, blue color cycling effect. This weirdness only appears in downlinks from the black and white low-light night cameras aboard the spacecraft. If you've ever watched black and white TV, you know there are no native colors other than variations on black, white, and gray. But NASA seems to have found a way to colorize their black and white TV signals in ways no other broadcaster ever has before. The two example clips shown here are slowed to 10% normal speed to emphasize the phenomenon. It's quite distracting to the eye, and therefore likely to help obscure that which we are not meant to see. Since the STS-48 incident caused a furor in the early 1990s, rumors have abounded that NASA instituted an 8 to 10 second delay in their live broadcasts from space. It was denied, of course. In 2001, during the docking of STS-102 to ISSE, a well-known debunker smugly claimed that with stopwatch in hand, he timed the live broadcast of the event, and thus proved that there was indeed no delay. His claim was unproven. The pre-docking maneuvers of Russian cargo freighter Progress 18 in June 2005 left no doubt that there was a delay. In fact, that delay has been shown to be no less than 20 seconds. As Progress was approaching the station for docking, a ground controller at Moscow Mission Control mildly complained that the live video feed they were getting from NASA included this 20-second delay. He did, however, say it was okay. Let's take a look at the proof for this delay in broadcast now, shall we? This is the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, just outside Moscow. The man who inadvertently spilled the beans on NASA's long-denied broadcast delay works in this building. It's known by the acronym TSUP. This is a sizable complex, and many different aspects of the Russian space program are monitored from here. Now let's hear the words which expose the secret.
Range is 63, right? 62 actually. Well, it's about 20 seconds delay that we have here. Yeah, it's a slight delay. It's okay. Range is 63, right? 62 actually. Well, it's about 20 seconds delay that we have here. Yeah, it's a slight delay. It's okay.
You heard it all for yourself twice. The ground controller in Moscow was referencing a 20-second delay in the live video feed being provided from Houston to aid the Russians in guiding and tracking the automated Progress vehicle. So there can no longer be any doubt. There is a broadcast delay. And NASA doesn't even let our Russian partners in the ISS program have it in real time. We've covered the artificial snow NASA adds to their TV signal at night, as well as the odd red-green-blue color cycling in the nighttime black and white TV. Now we've shown you that the so-called live TV from space is broadcast on a considerable delay. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Knowing these tricks NASA uses to obscure anomalies in space, you should now be ready to see what gets past the sensors. Next for your examination are the anomalies of STS-96. The intrepid crew of STS-96. The flight of STS-96 began with the liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery from Launch Complex 39B, Kennedy Space Center, on 27 May 1999 at 10:50 Greenwich Mean Time. The mission to the new International Space Station was designated ISS Flight 2A.1. It was devoted to pre-stocking supplies aboard and included an EVA, or spacewalk, to install a Russian-made exterior crane known as Strela. At this time, ISS was uninhabited and would remain so for well over another year. The first expedition crew arrived 1st November 2000, and the space station has been occupied continuously ever since. However, in spring 1999, ISS consisted of just two modules, the Russian Zarya and the American Unity node. The crew did a fine job, meeting all goals set for them. The flight lasted just over 9.5 days, landing safely back at Kennedy Space Center, runway 15, 6 June 1999 at 6:03 Greenwich Mean Time. The orb is the first of 4 incidents from STS-96. This event took place on 3rd June 1999 east of New Zealand. The time at Mission Control Houston was in the wee hours of the morning. The crew were asleep. It was early evening on the surface of Earth far below. On orbit, the sun was just setting. Discovery was flying tail first into the night, and the payload bay camera was pointed east toward the ship's vertical tail. Off the tail could be seen a reddish, glowing orb. This orb was pulsating slowly and hovering in a fixed position relative to the shuttle. During the entire time of this incident, the object never moved in any direction. The sun went below the horizon and the shuttle's tail disappeared into darkness. The object, however, remained. This strongly suggests that it was self-luminous. Its lack of relative motion shows it was in the same orbit as Discovery and that it was not astronomical in nature. This is one of the emptiest places on Earth. It is virtually devoid of inhabited islands, and there are almost no shipping lanes. 6 people working with intense concentration at their stations and 1 talking excitedly on the phone. Were they concerned about the object out there moving with Discovery? The object is in the highlighted circle. Shuttle's vertical tail is to the right with a photo for comparison. Note that the tail is still illuminated by the setting sun. That would change shortly, while the object, which is further into the darkness, remains lighted. The sequence of events begins with the animated tracker showing the shuttle station complex east of New Zealand flying into the night. A quick look at Mission Control before heading up to Discovery for a view from the payload bay camera. As the sun sets on the vertical tail, please notice the object near center screen. The overall redness in the picture is an artifact caused by NASA color cameras at night. The object is out there beyond the vertical tail of Discovery. We can see here that as the sun sets, Discovery's vertical tail is lost in the darkness of night. The object remains, however. This is virtual proof that it is self-luminous. How else could it continue to be visible? If you watch carefully, you can see that the anomaly is actually pulsating. It's getting brighter and dimmer on a very slow cycle. Suddenly, the Inco cuts the live feed and takes us to the animated tracker again. Back to Mission Control Houston. What is the man on the phone doing? Then the Inco returns us to the payload bay camera for a last look at the object before he cuts us off for good. This is the sunset portion of the clip. At 10 times normal speed, the pulsating characteristic really stands out. And after the sun has gone down, just exactly what is illuminating it out there in the dark? This is the same accelerated clip zoomed in 200%. This close-up reveals that the object is rather egg-shaped. It may even be the same object seen 90 minutes later in the flyby incident. Please bear in mind that the sun was behind the camera, over the shoulder if you will. This shows us that the object was actually deeper into the night than Discovery herself, precluding this thing being ice or debris illuminated by the sun. After a few minutes observing this object, the Inco at Houston cut the public feed. Why was the feed cut with such an interesting object in view? I think we can guess. It's certain that there are no celestial objects in the sky which could travel with Discovery and ISSI. There were also no man-made satellites or spacecraft on the same orbit as the shuttle station complex, let alone self-luminous man-made craft. So we are left with an anomaly. The orb was the first anomalous incident from STS-96. It is also possibly connected with the next event, the flyby, which took place just one orbit later in close proximity to this same location on the globe. This event occurred in full darkness over the Pacific Ocean, east of New Zealand on 3rd June 1999. The astronauts had completed their assigned tasks aboard the station. The hatches between shuttle and the station were closed and sealed. Some 45 minutes later, the shuttle crew executed a series of maneuvers designed to boost the orbit of the complex. Whilst this was going on, something bizarre and unexpected took place. A surprising object buzzed past the shuttle station complex. It was very bright, very close, and exhibited a pulsating characteristic. The camera was set for infinity, and the object displayed a sharply focused, rounded outline. This tells us that it was quite a bit further away than just a few feet from the camera lens, yet its brightness in the absence of sunlight strongly suggests self-illumination. The orb was seen over the same area of the Central Pacific Ocean in the last event. This scene is from Discovery's low-light payload bay camera during the orbital reboost maneuver. Technicians at Mission Control were monitoring how the rocket firings were affecting the solar panels. Quite suddenly and unexpectedly, a bright anomaly showed up. It was the first I ever found in NASA footage. It shocked me to the bone and inspired all the work I've completed since. This is the anomaly. And this is ice. Compare them, if you will. Here we have the anomaly repeated 3 times for you. Notice the sharply defined egg shape and the pulsating characteristic. Compare this object carefully with the ice chip you'll see later. At 10% normal speed, the shape and behavior of the anomaly become much more evident. You can see just how bright this thing is, too. NASA's snowy mask and the red-green-blue color cycling are also well in evidence here. With colors reversed, the way this thing pulsates becomes even harder to miss. When enlarged 200%, the egg shape of this object becomes obvious. "200% enlargement combined with reversed coloration." There are those who will say that the anomalous object is just another out-of-focus ice particle or fragment of debris. This is what a real ice chip looks like. Notice how dull it is, even in the floodlight mounted on the camera. Taking into account the facts of this case, I must conclude that a self-propelled, self-luminous object flew in close proximity to the shuttle station complex on 3rd June 1999. This object is obviously not associated with any publicly known Earth-based space program, so it must be something else. What? Your guess is as good as mine. I have called this entire 7-minute live downlink the Florida sequence. In my personal opinion, it is possibly the most important NASA UFO footage I have ever captured myself. By 4th June 1999, the STS-96 resupply mission to ISSE was in its last days. The wee hours of 4th June were a quiet time aboard Discovery and at mission control as well. Shuttle Discovery had undocked from the International Space Station the day before. The crew were enjoying some much-deserved rest and were in their sleep period during this incident. The ship was making a nighttime pass over the Gulf of Mexico, heading northeast above South Florida and out over the Atlantic Ocean. As Discovery sailed past Florida, her path took her nearly parallel to the east coast of the United States. Potent thunderstorms were in evidence far below, and as the shuttle flew over, the low-light night camera in the payload bay also caught sight of 21 anomalous objects amongst those storms. Some of the features in this view are named for you here. That glow on the clouds is caused by the last quarter moon, which was high in the sky at the time. At all times during these events, the payload bay camera was under the control of the Instrument and Communication Officer, known by the acronym INCO. He was operating by remote control from a desk in Mission Control Houston. The INCO has the last word on what goes out to the public from these live downlinks. Within moments of passing over Miami, it became apparent that there were powerful thunderstorms raging on the ocean far below. Equally visible amongst the lightning flashes were a number of anomalous objects.
This is Mission Control Houston, continuing to receive downlink television pictures from the Space Shuttle Discovery's payload bay as it orbits 243 miles over the Florida Peninsula. In addition, these shots showing some very active thunderstorms off the coast of Florida.
And now the anomalous action begins with the first of 21 approaching from upper right. At times there will be too many of these for me to keep up with, so just look for the circles. As the waltz of the anomalies progresses, watch as many of these dive right into the clouds, being lost in the haze after they decelerate, which meteors never do. Also entering from upper right, the second object. Two more from the upper right, moving much faster. From the upper right, once again, two objects much larger and much brighter than what we've seen so far. A third one will appear soon. They almost seem to be dancing to the background music, don't they? The first of the really fast guys comes in from the top, followed almost immediately by two more from the left. Notice the strobing object coming from the right? Please note the second strober coming in from the top. Suddenly, the Inco closes down the iris on the camera. Coming in from the upper right is another of these brighter, slower objects. The Inco decides to fool around with the camera again. There's no point to it, but he does it anyway. Then, inexplicably, he gives it back to us. Numerous fast objects continue to make their appearance down below. The sheer number of these faster objects just boggles the mind. They keep coming in and coming in. There seems no end to them. Are they having a convention down there? The location is now somewhere off the coast of New England, USA. We can see this object is headed for the center of the picture. The Inco shows a very clear interest in this object as he has been moving the camera to follow it. This interest is confirmed when he decides to zoom in a second time for a closer look. Just as it seemed we were actually going to get a good look at the thing, the Inco cut the feed and we were left with a screen full of interference. The feed has been cut, but the highlighted circle shows where the anomalies were seen. Now we are returned to a nice safe view at Mission Control Center, Houston. This review covers some of the more intriguing anomalies from the Florida sequence. Please take note that all of them seem to have an affinity for lightning discharges. One wonders why this would be. These two objects have been calculated to be doing 100,000 miles per hour in the atmosphere when they first appear, yet they decelerate to a near stop before they descend into the clouds. Such changes in velocity, or delta V, are not possible for ice, debris, or meteors. This strobing object can actually be seen to descend into the clouds at the end of its run. I call this one the valley object because it seems to sneak between two banks of clouds. And of course, this is the object which got the attention of the Inco. He zoomed in and we were cut off. Three distinct kinds of objects could be seen down there amongst the clouds. Some were quite large and bright. These moved rather slowly by comparison. The second class of objects were much smaller and moved at extremely high speed. The third type were seen to be strobing and moved more slowly like the large bright ones. All seemed attracted to the lightning discharges. UFO researcher and editor of Filer's Weekly Files, former Air Force Major George Filer of New Jersey, calculated the speed of some of these objects to be in the neighborhood of 100,000 miles per hour in the atmosphere. Several of the objects were also observed to decelerate, enter the clouds, and become lost to sight. I see little chance that any of these objects might be meteors or aircraft. Meteors burn out quickly and never visibly decelerate. None of these objects exhibited any of the characteristics of meteors or any other common phenomenon. Even the largest of aircraft would be too small to be visible from the altitude of the space shuttle's orbit and are not capable of the velocities observed. Besides, no pilot in his right mind would willingly take his airplane into a thunderstorm. It would be suicide. The lighting conditions during these events changed from total night at the beginning, both above in orbit and below on the surface, all the way to early morning at sea level by the time the downlink was cut. Yet the aspect of the objects did not change throughout the entire sequence of events. Ordinary debris and bits of ice are frequently seen against the Earth during twilight, both at sunrise and sunset. But as the sun rises and illuminates the surface, these rapidly become lost against the bright background of Earth and oceans below. These objects remained quite easily seen right up to the point that the live downlink was unceremoniously cut off, long after the sun came up, which strongly suggests self-luminosity. As noted before, the strange objects observed in the Florida sequence seemed to be moving toward those thunderstorms. Why? One might speculate they were charging batteries. What were they? I can't tell you that. You will have to decide for yourself. For me, they remain unknown. This event, like Florida, took place on 4th June 1999, just around orbital dawn. It was one orbit and 90 minutes later, though. The crew were asleep. As Discovery flew past Houston, Texas, the NASA announcer informed viewers that the city below was the home of Mission Control. The camera then zoomed in for a close-up. Suddenly, something shot by at extreme speed, followed by a much larger and brighter object. This object came in from the northwest, passing over Houston and on out over the Gulf of Mexico. It visibly decelerated, came to a halt and dimmed, but didn't actually disappear. Immediately, a much smaller object appeared and traveled west in a straight line. It soon left our field of view. The objects displayed none of the characteristics of meteors. Meteors burn out rapidly and they never decelerate. In addition, a meteor will never burn out and light up again as this strange bright object does. Once burnt, a meteor never returns. As Discovery left Houston behind, the payload bay camera zoomed even closer than before. Over the next few minutes, 3 more small objects were seen. Soon after the last of these small objects was sighted, the live downlink was discontinued. There was never any indication that ground technicians at Mission Control were aware anything unusual had happened. This in spite of the fact that something very large and strange had just flown right over their heads. This is the closest tracker to the Houston event and was shown about 20 minutes before its onset. The moving circle illustrates shuttle's path during the incidents, and the city of Houston is indicated by the blinking dot.
Shuttle orbiting some 48 miles in front of the International Space Station, which is on its own after yesterday's undocking at 5:39 p.m. Central Time.
The moon will be seen reflecting off rivers and bodies of water below all through this sequence.
These low-light television camera pictures from the payload bay showing cities along the Gulf Coast. The large assortment of lights just entering the screen from the right is the city of Houston, Texas, where Mission Control resides.
Orbital sunrise right here. This is where the action begins. There, see the streak? Followed by a bright object and a small one to the left. The Inco zooms out. And right back in, closer than before. Today, zooming telescopically at night like this is almost unheard of. As we proceed to the east, New Orleans will come into view, along with another anomalous object moving west. Satellites and spacecraft from Earth never orbit to the west. As Discovery crosses over the southern United States, a few of the landmarks on the surface are identified for you. Remember, this view is powerfully zoomed telescopically. It's therefore unlikely that the anomalies are close by the shuttle. There at the bottom, a fast object, quickly followed by another westbound anomaly. As the sun rises higher, illuminating the clouds below, the Inco discontinues the live feed. The streak is a mystery. It's definitely not a meteor. It's too fast to be nearby ice or debris, and its trajectory is parallel to the bright decelerating object. The Houston event has been isolated for you here and presented with the helpful circles. The milky arcs are caused by the sun. They are lens flares, not clouds. This time we zoomed in 200%. An attempt has been made to track with the objects as they move. Not an easy task. At 50% speed, you can really see how this object disappears, reappears, and decelerates rapidly. Meteors cannot do this. I call this the New Orleans object because it appears from out over the Gulf of Mexico, south of that fair city. Note that as it proceeds on its westerly course, it seems to hug the coast of Louisiana. Once more, 200% zoom and track. See the meteor? Or is it? Then we see an anomalous object fly right over Atlanta, Georgia, heading west toward Alabama. Notice how the fast object crosses the path of the other at a right angle. Could this be a weapons salvo? I'll leave that for you to decide. The series of events I call the Houston sequence contains several unsolved mysteries. What was that lightning speed streak? Why was its course parallel to the bright decelerating object? Why did the bright object go out and light up again? Where did the westbound object originate? The object traveling west along the Louisiana coast raises other questions. What was it? Where did it come from? Why did it appear to head toward Houston where the first three anomalies were seen? Why was it skirting the seashore? And the final event over Atlanta begs for answers too. What was that object which crossed the path of the westbound object at right angles? It had some resemblance to a meteor, but was it? Remember STS-48 with the apparent attempt to shoot down an unidentified flying object? Could we speculate that the fast object was possibly a shot across the bow using a secret military weapon? We may never know. All things considered, these objects defy conventional explanation. I can't tell you what they were doing, or why. For me, they are unknowns. When one takes in the big picture concerning the strange events occurring in the waning days of STS-96, this flight must rank amongst the most intriguing. On 2 consecutive dates, 3rd and 4th June 1999, unknowns appeared and behaved strangely in sight of Discovery's cameras. On each of the days, there were 2 weird events within 90 minutes of each other over nearly the same 2 regions of the globe. Can all of this be mere coincidence? At the end of the day, it's up to you to draw your own conclusions. And installed exterior handrails to aid future spacewalks. Atlantis landed safely back at Kennedy Space Center, runway 15 at 6:20 Greenwich Mean Time on 29th May 2000. Total duration 9 days, 20 hours, 9 minutes. This incident took place on 23rd May 2000 at approximately 9:29 Greenwich Mean Time. It was orbital dawn. The shuttle station complex was passing over the Gulf of Mexico and the southern states, particularly Louisiana. The payload bay camera was active and pointing roughly to the southeast. Suddenly, unusual things started to happen. A very bright, pulsating object appeared above the atmosphere. The object continued to brighten and seemed to come nearer. As this thing came closer, the iris was stopped down, the camera panned away, and the live downlink suddenly cut. This procedure has been frequently observed on the part of the INCO when something unusual comes into the field of view. It would have been interesting to see if the object came right up to Shuttle Atlantis. There were also 3 other objects seen crossing east to west at the top of the screen. As is so oft seen during these downlinks, the snowy mask and the red, green, blue color cycling are very much present. This is a view looking southwest over the Gulf of Mexico and the coast surrounding it. There was a bright moon shining down from the southern sky. Orbital sunrise takes place right here. You can see cities on the ground and lightning discharges in the distance. Just left of center screen, a bright anomaly is making its presence known. As it gets brighter and brighter, notice that it's pulsating in a seemingly random cycle. You might also note that it appears to be coming steadily closer to the camera. At the top of your screen, first 1, then 2, finally 3 smaller and apparently more distant objects traverse from east to west. The highest one is very fast, and the lower one about half the speed. In the middle, a strobing object just lazes along. Man-made satellites and craft never orbit to the west, and meteors don't burn above the atmosphere. As you can see for yourself, at this point the INCO seems to notice the bright anomaly. He stops down the iris, pans away, and cuts to the animated tracker. Then we are taken back to a completely different view. Oh well, we almost saw what that thing was. Here we have the same footage accelerated to 5 times normal speed. Please note the strange pattern of flashes coming from the brightest object. At 200% zoom, this is probably the best look we'll ever get at this object. Now I've made an attempt to track along with it as it traverses the field of view. But at the very end, The Inco's rate of pan still exceeds my ability to keep up. This is the object at top screen. At the distance it appears to be, it must be moving much faster than the shuttle. In this case, we have the anomaly which was just skimming above the atmosphere of Earth. Even at what appears to be a snail's pace in comparison, it must be blazing along to the west at thousands of miles or kilometers per hour. Last, we look at the so-called strobing object. We've seen these before over Florida. I cannot tell you what it might be, but these are highly unusual under these circumstances. I must reiterate that man-made satellites and craft never orbit to the west, as all four of the anomalies in this sequence were doing. Remember, this event happened over the state of Louisiana, with the camera looking southwest over the coast in Gulf of Mexico. In all, there were 4 anomalous objects in this sequence. Way too much for the comfort of the Inca, who finally just shut off the downlink. That bright object near center was actually tracking along with our spacecraft on the same orbit, or it would have been moving off in some direction. The only true motion this object appeared to display was that it seemed to be coming nearer the shuttle station complex. Just as the main object seemed to be approaching close enough for a possible identification, the Inco tried to obscure it by stopping down the iris of the camera and panning to the left. What might this fast object scooting across the top of the field of view have been? It appears to be too far away to be ice or debris near the spacecraft. Then we have this slower object also moving west, which just skimmed over the edge of the Earth's atmosphere. Finally, there was this mysterious strobing object, which is quite similar to those seen during STS-96 in the Florida sequence. What are these? They don't flash like tumbling ice and debris. Those are common and always have a repeating pattern. These objects were not meteors. Those can't be seen above the atmosphere, as they are made visible to the eye by the heat of friction with the air at their blistering speeds. The Louisiana sequence was the only event of note from STS-101, which was a relatively quiet mission for anomalies. Next is the amazing flight of STS-106 in September 2000. The brave crew of STS-106. On 8th September 2000 at 12:46 GMT, Space Shuttle Atlantis was launched into orbit. She lifted off from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, Florida, initiating the flight of STS-106. Atlantis spent the next 2 days catching up with the still unmanned space station. Rendezvous took place on 10 September, with final docking at 5:51 GMT. The mission, ISS Assembly Flight 2A.2A, was the next in an ongoing series of flights to build and supply the International Space Station, and the crew flawlessly performed all tasks on the agenda. STS-106 was the next to last shuttle flight to an unmanned International Space Station. A single EVA, or spacewalk, was carried out by cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko and astronaut Edward Lu. The 2 spacewalkers made the final cable connections between the Zarya module and the brand new service module named Zvezda, which was launched from Baikonur Cosmodrome atop a Proton booster in July 2000. Another essential task which was completed by the STS-106 crew was the activation of the toilet facilities aboard Zvezda. 10,965 pounds or 4,974 kilograms of supplies and equipment were delivered by Atlantis to ISI. Most of this was contained in the Spacehab Logistics Double Module. In addition, the STS-106 crew unloaded an automated Russian cargo ship called Progress, which docked to the station in July 2000. The first expedition crew launched weeks later in a Soyuz spacecraft atop a Starsem rocket booster from Baikonur Cosmodrome on 30th October 2000. Undocking of STS-106 occurred at 3:36 GMT on 18th September 2000, with the shuttle flying alone for the next 29 hours. Atlantis safely landed on runway 15 Kennedy Space Center at 7:56 GMT, 19th September 2000, for a total flight duration of 11 days, 19 hours, 12 minutes. In the pre-dawn of 18th September 2000, at approximately 9:47 Greenwich Mean Time, Atlantis low-light black and white payload bay camera was pointed in a southwesterly direction toward the eastern Great Lakes area, including Ontario, Canada, and several U.S. states. The usual snowy mask was snugly in place. The remnants of Hurricane Gordon could be seen in the distance. The crew were busy preparing to land the next day. They exchanged verbal messages from time to time with Mission Control in Houston during this event. As the Inco panned the camera, a formation of 4 anomalies was revealed. 3 of these were flying in formation as an almost perfect isosceles triangle at the exact orbit and speed as Atlantis. These objects were traveling between the shuttle and the surface of Earth. Their apparent upward motion during the event was strictly due to the camera being moved by the Inco. It has been suggested by debunkers that the objects are the U.S. Navy's NOSS triplets, a trio of satellites which orbit in a triangle formation. This is patently impossible. Atlantis was orbiting at 240 plus miles, or 380 plus kilometers above the Earth at the time. The triplets orbit at some 750 miles, or 1,200 kilometers altitude. For this reason alone, the triplets cannot be the answer. Next, we'll explain in more detail where this event took place. Some features are labeled for you here. Atlantis was flying over the east-central part of North America. The anomalies appear to have been roughly in the direction of West Virginia. Shuttle is circled for location. The blinking arrows denote the direction of the camera during the incident we are focusing on. As you can see, the camera was pointing down and slightly to the south. This sequence opens with a view toward the southwest to the Gulf of Mexico and the southern United States. Our NASA commentator errs a bit on this at first, but he'll soon correct himself.
So this a view of the east coast of the United States. This Atlantis continues north up the east coast. This a very clear night.
He's just about to correct his mistake now. With all the resources at his command, it's amazing that he didn't know where Atlantis was from the beginning.
Actually, this looking back towards the Gulf Coast of the United States as Atlantis continues north. Now coming to view some clouds Coming into view now, some clouds from Hurricane Gordon as Atlantis' current position begins to move north. This looking back towards the Gulf of Mexico, again from the southern United States.
The moon makes a very brief appearance at upper right. As the camera is panned to the left, Hurricane Gordon, downgraded by this time to a tropical storm, comes into view, as well as the aft bulkhead of Atlantis crew cabin. Almost immediately, the triangle formation comes into view, along with a companion to its upper left.
Again, this is the remnants of Hurricane, now Tropical Storm Gordon, above the southeast United States. Atlantis course taking it straight up the east coast of the United States now.
Watch the upper left corner of the screen for a quick look at the fifth and final anomaly of this event.
Atlantis, Houston, we're about a minute and a half to a 12-minute comm gap. We'll have you again at 21:15.
A comm gap over America? Huh?
Copy, 21:15, and just beautiful weather over the whole U.S. right now.
The weather doesn't look so great from here.
This view looks...
We're all envious of your view.
A tropical storm covering a quarter of the U.S. is great weather? What?
This view now looking looking west from Atlantis' path along the east coast at Lake Ontario and Lake Erie in the Great Lakes. Buffalo, New York in view. With Toronto
And the feed is cut. I seriously doubt that the Inco ever saw the anomalies. Now for a closer look at those. This clip is brightened 25% to make the objects easier to see. Note that the camera is panning downward throughout most of this footage. The formation, however, is actually in synchronous orbit with Atlantis and is between the shuttle and Earth. Please bear in mind that the sun had not yet risen, so the objects are quite possibly self-luminous. Ice and debris generally fly about at random. It would be a gigantic coincidence for such bits to fly in a tight formation. The camera ceases its downward pan and the fifth anomaly passes by, moving west. Once you know where to watch, the formation truly stands out when speeded up. Triangles have been reported by ground observers the world over in the last few decades. Is this one of them? Now the triangle formation is zoomed in 200% for a good close-up view. At this magnification, we find a surprise. The four objects are moving independently of each other. They are constantly adjusting their positions within the formation, as if piloted like planes in an airshow performance. This behavior is certainly beyond the capabilities of mere ice and debris. Once on a trajectory, those continue in the same direction forever, unless an outside influence intervenes, like the firing of the control jets aboard the shuttle. The sort of back and forth, side to side motion seen here cannot be caused by the control jets. This time the formation clip is accelerated to 5 times normal speed, repeated 3 times without the circles. You should know where and what to look for by now anyway. Speeded up, they really stand out against the towns and cities down below. They're pretty eye-catching, aren't they? This is a quick look at the fifth object, which was not part of the formation. Notice that it visibly slows down as it leaves our field of view. In addition, it was flying west. Satellites and other man-made craft never do this. Meteors and common debris never slow down. So we are left with an unexplained anomaly. We've now had a chance to closely examine what happened outside Space Shuttle Atlantis over the eastern Great Lakes region of North America in the pre-dawn of 18th September 2000. The sun had not yet risen, and yet the low-light payload bay camera captured the luminous images of 4 objects flying in a triangle formation with a companion in the lead. These objects appeared to behave as if piloted or under intelligent control. Then we looked at the fifth object, which was on a westerly course. It visibly decelerated before leaving our field of view. These are 2 things that man-made craft and meteors never do. We demonstrated that the camera was pointed down and to the southwest, and that shuttle debris or ice are not the answer. What we have in the triangle event is one of the most interesting we've examined thus far. It's unique in the annals of space travel. What do you think? In the pre-dawn hours of 19th September 2000 at approximately 10:30 GMT, Atlantis was passing over America's heartland. Just as the shuttle was heading over Chicago, Illinois, 2 unusual objects were seen flying below. The first object appeared smaller or farther away. The second object was very bright and moved with some speed. The Inco took steps to zoom in and follow the progress of this object until it was too far afield to track any longer. Or perhaps someone realized that the video was going out to the public and felt it was time to let it go. What were these things? Why did the people in Mission Control take pains to zoom in to investigate the second object? The anomalies were not ice flakes or debris sparkling in the rising sun. As a matter of fact, the announcer in Houston even said that the sun would rise in about a minute. This proves to us that the objects were self-luminous. Let's have a look for ourselves now, shall we? This tracking map was shown just after the downlink had been cut. The moving circle denotes the orbital path of Atlantis during the incident, and the flashing arrows indicate how the payload bay camera was oriented. Now, on to the footage of the strange objects. No shortage of snow in this picture. As the scene opens, the first of 2 anomalous objects appears at bottom screen. This one remained more or less in view throughout the event. During the first part of its traverse, the camera was in zoom mode. The camera was then backed off, but the object is still in sight down there if you look carefully. This is where the camera was backed out. As it did so, we got our first glimpse of the second, brighter anomaly.
Atlantis is approaching sunrise as it approaches the Great Lakes area.
Remember that. Atlantis is approaching sunrise. That bright patch of light toward the right edge of our screen is Chicago, Illinois. The announcer has noticed the bright anomaly. Listen.
This
Imagine his dilemma. What to say?
This a view of Chicago and also some...
Say something, quick.
ice crystals or other items being illuminated by the rising sun. Atlantis moving into sunrise. In just about the next minute or so, as that occurs, ice crystals or water that's been dumped overboard from the shuttle is always illuminated in the close vicinity of the spacecraft. Again, that view of Chicago, though, and the shore of Lake Michigan.
Good one. Ice and the rising sun when the sun doesn't rise for another minute. You can't have it both ways. How about the attempt to divert attention? That view of Chicago, though.
And across the states of Indiana and Ohio.
The sun just rose for Atlantis. It's still nighttime on the surface, however. And let's not forget to concentrate on the states of Indiana and Ohio. Don't think about what just passed over Chicago. The anomalous part of the event is over now.
The pre-dawn Great Lakes region of the United States is seen from Atlantis at an altitude of 240 statute miles. Atlantis just now moving into sunrise. As it course takes it above Canada, it'll cross out over the Atlantic Ocean north of Newfoundland.
Caught him lying to the public this time, didn't we? Now for some enhancements. This is that first object, zoomed 200% at 5 times normal speed. Remember I said it was visible throughout the event? Watch this and see for yourself. As the anomaly passed over the city of Chicago, it was almost impossible for me to track it with the circle because the bright lights washed it out. Without the circle, knowing where to look, you can easily keep the anomaly in sight. For your enjoyment, we present the second object once more, with the NASA commentator struggling mightily to explain what he was confronted with by the Inco letting this thing go out to the public. That long pause is the giveaway. Just hear him sweat it out trying to decide what to say. So, here are your tongue-tied tax dollars at work.
Atlantis is approaching sunrise as it approaches the Great Lakes area. This a view of Chicago and also some ice crystals or other items being illuminated by the rising sun. Atlantis moving into sunrise. In just about the next minute or so, as that occurs, ice crystals or water that's been dumped overboard from the shuttle is always illuminated in the close vicinity of the spacecraft. Again, that view of Chicago, though, and the shore of Lake Michigan.
This is the second anomaly at 3 times normal speed, zoomed 200%. Note the odd flashing pattern exhibited by this thing. Please also notice that it retains its shape between blinks, as a bit of tumbling ice or debris would not do. I refer you to the ice chip seen during the STS-96 flyby incident. Remember how dull it was? This object is nothing like that. This event was comprised of two apparently self-luminous objects traveling northward over Indiana, Illinois, finally Chicago and Lake Michigan. The sun was not a factor by NASA's own admission, made by an obviously nervous commentator. He tried to dismiss them as ice or debris sparkling in the rising sun, but I think we know better now. It was a most intriguing incident indeed. STS-106 yielded some of the best anomalous events in my collection. We saw the fascinating triangle formation over the Midwestern United States. And finally, there was the Chicago sequence we just looked at. In my 20th century collection, only STS-96 gave us more unknowns.
Face it, Ralph. You've been there all afternoon and you're still gray.